this one, right down to the cats and dogs roaming around. Every distillery follows the same steps when making whiskey. Of course, they're going to have adjustments to these steps to get unique flavors, but it's always the same key steps.
Making malt whiskey begins with a clever wee trick. The barley is fooled into growing by steeping it in water. Then spreading it out on the malting house floor to germinate. As it germinates, the barley generates heat. It must be turned frequently to ensure that germination is even. To stop it growing, the barley is dried with warm air in a malt kiln. Or over a peat fire if a smoky flavour is desired. By now, the germination process has unlocked the starch, which is required for the next stage. At the mill, the malted barley is ground into a coarse flour called grist. It's a very noisy process. When the grist is mixed with hot water, the starch turns into a sugary liquid called wort. This process happens in the mash tun. After mashing, the wort is cooled. Only now can another special ingredient be added: yeast. A violent reaction begins. The washback becomes a trembling, bubbling cauldron as wort and yeast collide in frenzied fermentation. The yeast greedily devours the sugar, creating alcohol. Eventually, the yeast dies off, but its work is done. A strong, beer-like liquid called wash is the result. The wash is now a step closer to becoming a single malt whiskey. Now the distillation process can begin. The liquid is heated in a pot still, and because alcohol boils at a lower temperature, it separates from the water. This alcoholic vapor rises up the neck, and as it cools, it condenses back into liquid. But it needs to be distilled again to further increase its alcohol content, and that takes place here in the spirit still. Each distillery has its own unique shape of copper pot still, another factor that ensures each whiskey will have its own unique flavour. This time, the spirit is transformed. It is now around 70% alcohol and is known as new spirit.
Eventually, everything comes out as the second section called the heart of the run. It's about 70% alcohol by volume, and it's great for whiskey. So we'll send the heart of the run up the tube and into the cask. The final step, maturation. And the aging process always happens in a cask. So we'll head on in to learn more. Come on in. Perfect, so come on in and sit anywhere you like. Yeah, come on in, anywhere you like.
You're now in a secret place, at the very heart of the inner world of whiskey making. You are inside the cask, and when oak cask and spirit meet, they produce something truly remarkable.
A remarkable thing, of course, is Scotch whisky. And to get Scotch whisky, it has to be matured. It's always matured in oak wood casks because oak wood is strong, but it's also porous. It's breathing like we are. These casks are rebuilt by cooperers. Coopering, it's the ancient art of barrel building. And it takes about 4 to 5 years of training to become a cooper. And we say rebuild in Scotch whisky because we like to recycle barrels from other alcohol industries. There are 2 industries that are the most popular. By far, number 1 is in the southeastern U.S., where bourbon whiskey is made. Bourbon whiskey is matured in American oak wood. It's really sweet and soft, giving our whiskeys a nice sweetness. The second is in southern Spain, where sherry is made. Sherry, that fortified wine, right, it's matured in European oak wood. It's very fruity and it's spicy, giving our whiskey some character. And once these casks are rebuilt, they're toasted on the inside to bring old flavors back to life. And once those old flavors, sweetness, spiciness, fruitiness, are alive and well again, it's time for the whiskey to enter the cask. And you'll notice as the heart of the run enters, it's clear. Whiskey pulls all of its color out of the wood as it's maturing. Of course, it's pulling those flavors we talked about out of the wood as well, but the alcohol itself has a bit of flavor too. And to color drink Scotch whisky, it has to be matured for at least 3 years on Scottish land. But we've seen whiskeys older than 3 years old, right? We've seen 10, maybe 20-year-old whiskeys. In fact, the oldest whiskey in our gift shop is 55 years old. You can wait as long as you like. And no matter how long you wait, the waiting game happens in storage facilities across the country. At any given time, there's 22 million barrels of whiskey being matured in Scotland. And as they're maturing, some of that whiskey is being stolen away from us through evaporation, or what we like to call the angel share. Right? We know the oak wood is breathing. Hear me out. We know the oak wood is breathing, so we're losing up to 2% of the whiskey in the cask every year to evaporation. For example, if you reopened a 25-year-old cask of whiskey, you could lose up to 40% of the whiskey you started with. It's why older whiskeys tend to be more expensive, right? They're not necessarily better. You just have less to sell thanks to those groovy angels.
So now you've discovered how nature's ingredients and time itself have been harnessed in my making. I'm created where tradition, science, magic and myth all meet. My journey began many years ago in Scotland's wildest landscapes, and soon it will reach its final destination, your glass. Right, I'm off to join the angels myself.
As the spirit joins the angels, we'll head upstairs to Sense of Scotland. Going up some stairs, would anyone like to use an elevator? Malt Scotch whisky regions that are all known for unique flavors and smells of their whiskey. And we're going to go on a road trip to explore these regions. Of course, we're going to learn about whiskey, but we're here to see the sights as well on our road trip. So we'll start with the lowlands, we'll head up to the highlands, go up to Speyside, down to Kempton, and wrap up on Ireland. You may have noticed you've got a map in your hands, very similar to this one. But your map, it's not just for navigation, it's a scratch and sniff map. It's going to tell us more about these different undertones, right? Obviously, whiskey today is not going to taste like this, right? There's no alcohol in the card. But I promise the alcohol is coming, okay? So, we're going to start where we're sitting. That's in the Scottish lowlands. We're just north of England and divided by the River Tay and River Clyde. It's in the name. The region is known for flat lands and rolling hills. This type of land is great for sweeping fields of harvest, like barley. It's also very good for one of the nation's most popular sports. That would be golf.
In fact, the British Golf Open was played in the lowlands this past summer. This is the most densely populated part of Scotland. Glasgow is the west, Scotland's largest city, and the capital where we sit, Edinburgh. There's our neighbour, majestic Edinburgh Castle, and on the other end of the mile, ancient Holyrood Park. Edinburgh is a cultural hub. Every August, we host the largest arts festival in the world, the Fringe, along with the Royal Military Tattoo. Millions of people attend these events every August, but we have visitors throughout the year like you guys. There's plenty to do, including seeing the sights like the Forth Railway Bridge. So the whiskeys of the lowlands, they're known for these grain flavors. Think toast, cereals, biscuits or cookies, and malted barley. But there's also some zest. Think citrus like lemons or limes, or maybe some grapefruit. That would be the first scent on your card, the yellow circle at the bottom of the castle. You can scratch that to reveal a nice grapefruit scent. Our second stop takes us up to the Highlands. It's a vast expanse of beautiful nature, but we'll start in the city of Inverness. Inverness is the unofficial capital of the Highlands. Its neighbor is Loch Ness, home to Nessie, or Loch Swansea. But this region is also home to beautiful nature, like sweeping mountain ranges, wonderful waterfalls, and luscious lochs. Not only is the region home to natural wonders like the Old Man of Store on Skye, but it's home to man-made wonders, including the Glenfinnan Viaduct, carrying the train from Harry Potter, and Elandoni Castle, as seen in James Bond. If you visit the peak of summer, you'll see carpets of heather, a beautiful summer plant, and who knows, you may make a friend or two with a hairy Highland cow. They're pretty cute. But besides the cute cows, we've got some great whiskeys that are sweet, nutty, and floral. So go ahead, you can scratch that purple circle near the top for a nice floral Highland color. So we'll head all the way up to Speyside. Speyside is home to over 1/3 of Scotch whisky distilleries. It's a very busy place, but I promise we've got some time for us. On your left is the River Spey. This long and winding river gets its water from ancient ice melt. That ice melt is filtered through granite, taking most of the minerals out of the water and making the water really soft. Soft water tastes delicious. It's great for drinking, but it's also great for whiskey making. It's one of the reasons why there are so many distilleries in the region. If you get the chance to visit a distillery in Speyside, you'll notice their iconic pagoda rooftops. These were once used to help keep the smoke away from the barley as it dried. And to see just how large the industry is, take a look at these mountains of empty casks. They're waiting to be filled with alcohol that will one day become that Speyside whiskey. Up here, it's all about fruit. Think tropical, orchard, even dry fruits. And go ahead. As you're thinking about fruit, rub that blue circle at the top of the cask, and our fruit of the day is a gentle orchard pear. We're gonna head back down south, so this time to Campbellton. It's a tiny region with a big story to tell. Campbellton sits on the peninsula of Kintyre. It's one of the first places to catch the Gulf Stream as it hits Scotland and makes it one of the warmer places in the country. There's a lot of water surrounding the peninsula, so it's no surprise that fishing is a major industry in this region. But it may surprise you to know that back in the day, this little whiskey region was once a global capital for whiskey making. In fact, during the region's peak in the 1800s, there were 34 distilleries crammed in here. But sadly, the whiskey industry in Campbellton collapsed in the early 1900s. Today, there's only 3 distilleries making whiskey in the region. The oak breathes in some sea salty air and gives the whiskey saltiness. But there's also sweetness, like toffee, apple, and our next scent at the very bottom, the green circle, reveals a sweet vanilla. And our final stop takes us to Islay. We have to take a boat to get there, but I promise it's worth it, because this is the grand finale. Islay is home to just 3,500 people, but it's also home to 10 successful distilleries. You see this rock face, it's gorgeous. It's been cut by the waves of the Atlantic Ocean for thousands of years. These waves are pretty strong, but they're not the only strong thing around Islay. The whiskey can be a little strong. That's thanks to this, peat. Peat is a young form of coal. When you burn it, it gives off more smoke than heat. On Islay, they use peat to dry the barley, and the barley absorbs all that smokiness. And with nothing standing between Islay and the Atlantic until Canada, if you visit, you'll witness stellar west coast sunsets. Grand finale is all about smoke, right? Think cigars, burning wood, peat smoke, if you know it. But also, these whiskeys can have medicinal and maritime undertones. So go ahead. Yeah, the red circle in the middle will reveal a hearty whiskey. That wraps up our single malt tour of Scotland. But we've only talked about single malt whiskeys today. There's another type of Scotch whiskey that makes up 90% of global sales. That would be the blended Scotch whiskies, which we'll learn about in our blender sample room. So you guys can follow me.